Today, we're diving into a text that makes a case for what it calls a greatest creator. And it does this by looking at the absolutely staggering complexity and variety of life all around us, from our own DNA all the way up to massive ecosystems. So let's jump right in. The source material doesn't just hand you an answer. Nope, it kicks things off with a huge question for the reader. This one right here. This mystery is really the launchpad for its entire argument. To start building its case, the text tells us to look inward, away from the big stuff we can see and deep down into the tiny, microscopic blueprint that makes all living things tick. And the author starts with a number that's, well, it's pretty hard to even wrap your head around. 100 trillion. That's roughly how many individual cells are all working together just to make up one person. It really sets the stage for the kind of complexity we're talking about here. Now, let's zoom in even more. Because inside every single one of those 100 trillion cells, the source points out, you've got 23 pairs of chromosomes. And crammed into each of those is a mind-boggling amount of information, 3 billion base pairs. So to help us get a picture of what this means, the source gives us this incredible analogy. It says if you could somehow take all the chromosomes from just one person and string them together, end to end, that line would be over 600 times the distance from the Earth to the Sun. That's just a wild way to visualize how much data is packed inside us. And if that wasn't enough, here's another way to think about it. The author says that just to write down the info from one chromosome, you'd need a phone book with 200,000 pages. Again, it's all about driving home the incredible density of our genetic code. So what's actually carrying all this information? Well, the source defines the gene as the cornerstone of life. It's that special sequence in our DNA that has genetic effects and, basically writes the instructions for who we are. And this is where you really see just how much responsibility genes have, at least according to this text. It's not just about passing on traits. The author argues that genes are actively managing our entire lives, from birth to death, and even handle things like healing a cut. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. For all the amazing things genes do, the author points out they only make up this tiny little sliver of our DNA, like 2 to 4%. The function of almost all the rest of it is still a mystery. The text even quotes the scientific reality of it. The author uses this idea of a sealed book to suggest that the complexity we don't understand is probably even greater than what we do. The argument is that this points to a design that's way beyond what we can currently figure out. All right, so after going super small, the author then zooms all the way back out. And this becomes the second major pillar of the argument, the absolutely breathtaking, massive variety of life that we see all over the planet. And this part of the argument actually starts with the life we can't see. The source describes this dazzling world under the microscope, just teeming with countless microorganisms in astronomical numbers. They're basically the foundation for everything else. From there, we move on to the animal kingdom we can see. The text just throws out these huge numbers. 1 million species of insects, more than 9,000 species of birds, hundreds of thousands of other animals on land and in the oceans, and each one has its own unique way of living. And of course, you can't forget the plants. The author describes everything from tiny lichens on a rock to giant redwoods, from grass floating on water to vines that climb up everything, presenting all this variety as just one more piece of the puzzle. So, after laying out all this evidence, from the gene all the way to a redwood tree, the source starts to bring it all together. It does this by asking a bunch of questions that are really designed to lead you, the reader, to a specific answer. The text uses these really poetic, almost rhetorical questions to make its point. The argument is that these incredible features, like an insect's exoskeleton, a bird's wings, or a flower's petals, are just too perfect and too functional to be an accident. The language, you'll notice, implies someone had to equip or arm them. And there it is. This is the core of the entire argument. It draws a direct line from seeing all these intricate structures, both in our genes and in the world, to the conclusion that there must have been a creator. It's framed as really the only logical explanation for all this complexity. Then, the text takes on alternative ideas head-on. By asking, what does natural occurrence even mean, the author is suggesting that it's not a real explanation. It's more of a vague label we put on something we don't understand, not a satisfying answer for the ordered systems we see in nature. So when you put it all together, this is where the author lands. All the evidence presented, from that phone book's worth of information in a chromosome to the massive diversity of the animal kingdom, is put forward as proof of a single, intelligent, greatest creator.
And we'll end this explainer with one of the last big questions the source leaves with the reader. It zooms out one final time, from life on Earth to the whole universe, and asks you to think about whether the patterns we see here suggest some larger, controlling intelligence. It's definitely a provocative thought to end on.